Now that I have my St. Patty's Day shirt all drafted and ready to go, and it fits on my 33 inches of fabric, let's pull this sucker out, let's spread it out, and let's start making it. I am super excited to get started because this little fun light up EL wire is gonna look so much fun as this little fun addition to the shirt. I'm super excited. So let's dive on in. Now that I have my pattern printed off, I'm going to lay it out and tape it together. Having my pattern piece or my artboards numbered helps me make sure that I can puzzle this pattern together very quickly, because sometimes it doesn't always print in order. Then once I have it all taped together, lining up all the seams, I am going to cut it out. Next, I'm going to lay out the fabric and place all my pattern pieces on top. Because I am only working with 33 inches of fabric, I want to ensure that I don't make any mistakes and I can cut everything out first. So I'm going to trace around every single one of my patterns with a pencil so that I can make sure that there is no pattern piece that will be missing in the end. Then, once I have them all traced out, I'm going to cut them all out and begin to pile them all together so that they will be ready to get stitched. The next thing I'm going to do is start to sew them. So I'm going to begin by serging the edges of my facings and serging around all the pattern pieces. And I'm going to then sew them together instead of serging this entire garment together. Next, I'm going to be finishing off my sleeves. So I'm using a cover stitch machine here, and I am going to just turn that up and do that nice double-edged stitch on the hem of the sleeve and on the little cutout part of the sleeve as well. This will make sure that as then my sleeve gets set in, it is already finished and I don't have to deal with it. Next, I'm going to do my center cutout. I'm so excited for this part. I did decide not to do an inset of spandex or spandex net or anything, so we'll probably not quite stay together, but that's okay. So I'm just lining up the edges. I'm trying to make sure that that corner is perfectly aligned. If I go over, I'm gonna have to seam rip a little bit, which I do. I have to seam rip just a smidge to make sure that that facing will turn in nice. So then we're gonna cut out that center piece. It's sometimes a little intimidating to cut out that, but that makes half the fun. And then clip into your corners. Next, we're going to press those facing seams open and then press them to the inside. And I always like to get a really good press so that when I take it back to the cover stitch machine, it's not fighting me and I know I'm going to have that really nice crisp line. Now that I have that facing all nicely finished, I need to add in the gathering parts for the bust gather. So I just throw in some really long basting stitches, and I start pinning my pattern together, my pattern pieces together. Then I gather in using those gather pieces so that I get it nice and even, exactly where I want it to lay on my pattern, and just even it out. There we go, pin it down, and then it's time to sew that top seam. So that's sewing the bust to the belt on the front. If you don't pull your pins, make sure you work very slowly over them so you don't mess up your machine. And now it's time to sew the bottom half to the belt. I'm going to go ahead and finish up my sleeves right now as well. I try to batch some stuff so that when I move back over to the ironing board, I can press everything open and do a whole bunch of steps at the same time. I always make sure that I am pressing everything because that will help make your garment look really crisp at the end. So now it's time to do those side seams and shoulder seams. So I'm just lining up my fabric and sewing at my 5/8 inch seam allowance. And I am using a zigzag stitch because this is stretchy and I don't want my seams to pop. And then it's back to the ironing board. It's time to inset this sleeve. So the first thing I'm doing is lining up my underarm seam and then working up and finishing at the top of the sleeve that's already finished. So once these sleeves are in, the actual cuff part of the sleeve will be done. And then it's time to finish the top part of the cold shoulder, which I'm going to use the cover stitch. So I'm starting at the underarm sleeve, and I'm just moving all the way around this cover stitch. And because of how there's the sleeve in the way and everything, sometimes it is a little finicky, but you just have to keep like moving slow and keep moving forward and get it nice and crisp. Now it's time to finish off the neckline. So halfway through this stitch, I just turned it under. I actually had some thread, one of the threads break. So I had to stop and pull it out and get it re-threaded and everything and continue. So that's always fun, but you always want to check that, because if you get too far, you're like, oh, I missed it. And then finally, I'm going to hem up the bottom. So I just turned it up an inch, and I'm working my way around with this cover stitch machine. It is finally time to add the Light Up Clover. I first taped it down to a piece of paper to help the EL wire get that shape. And then I'm going to sew it to just a strip of fabric that I will be hand sewing in later. I decided to sew right through the paper to help maintain that shape so I didn't have EL wire going everywhere and then rip it away. And that actually seemed to work pretty well, as it to actually get like the base of it basted onto that thing. And then I just went back and I whip stitched all those pieces into place, making sure that it was laying exactly where I wanted it. With that EL wire, my thread got caught so many times. So if you do this, just be aware your thread will get caught all the time. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to whip stitch down the power just down so that it's never seen and it stays nicely behind that piece of fabric. Ooh, there it is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on my shirt, and I'm going to just lightly whip stitch it into place. I'm deciding to do it a light whip stitch so that when I want to wash the shirt, I can quickly just remove this little piece and wash it with no problem. I always find taking the electronics out completely is always the better way to go. Finally, I'm just going to sew a snap at the center back and add a little button so that my neck closure is finished. Ooh, and there it is. Ooh, I'm so excited. And there we have it, a new Light Up Clover shirt for this St. Patty's Day. I love being able to take my sloper and quickly pattern a new design in a shirt in half an hour and then print it out and put it together. It always takes longer than that to put it together and put all those fun finishing touches on it. But hey, then you have a great shirt to wear out and hang out. So if you enjoyed this video, definitely like and subscribe. Make sure to go see how I patterned this fun shirt in Adobe Illustrator. And I will see you in the next video.